Warren Wilds was aboard the USS Flying Fish when it sunk 2 Japanese ships during night attacks.
They estimated about 250 Japanese soldiers were on that ship, and after the ship went down, and there were a lot of them in the water, you know, clinging to wreckage and or whatever they had, life preservers or whatever. And it took us probably 2 to 3 hours before one of them would agree to come aboard. The captain had a book of Japanese that he was attempting to communicate with them, and he kept urging somebody to come aboard, but they absolutely refused, except this one soldier. Finally, it was very cold. The water was probably around 45, 50 degrees. So he came aboard, and he was almost frozen. He was almost frozen. He was very cold. And we took him down through the hatch, through the conning tower, into the control room, and then into the crew's quarters, and wrapped him in a blanket and gave him some hot soup. And he was scared to death. Obviously, he thought we were gonna torture him. We chained him up in the forward torpedo room, and kept him busy polishing the torpedo tube doors during the day, which he didn't like, and but he never gave us any problems. And you know, after a while, everybody relaxed. We realized that he was no danger to us, and he began to realize that we were treating him humanely. And subsequently, he wrote a letter and addressed it to the captain. And years later, every crew member got a translation of that letter, and it was very profound. He thanked us for treating him humanely, and thanked the crew and the officers, and I have no idea whatever happened to him. We dropped him off at Midway Island, and that's the last we saw of him.
We captured quite a few prisoners of war during World War II. The first prisoners of war that we took aboard were in the Battle of Midway.
The USS Trout, with Dean Brown aboard, was dispatched to sink a Japanese cruiser that had been battered by an American aircraft.
And by the time we got to its position, we discovered that it had sunk. And the only thing we could find there was a huge field of debris, flotsam as sailors would call it, and oil from the sunken ship. Well, we looked through that stuff, and finally we discovered 2 Japanese sailors that were clinging to some flotsam, and we took them aboard, and we had to clean a thick layer of black oil from their bodies and give them water and juice because they were dehydrated, sunburned, and so forth. And we took them aboard, and they responded very quickly. One was a very young man, and he could not speak English very well, but he knew some English. And so he would talk to us and tell us anything that he knew. The other fellow was older, and he would not talk at all. Well, we knew that the Japanese had a sworn code of conduct, and that we assumed that this older man would not talk simply because he was complying with his sworn code. So we didn't try to force him to talk or anything like that. So we took them to Pearl Harbor, where we turned them over to the Marines and the Navy intelligence there. And after we'd done that, the intelligence organization came back to us, and it told us that this older man wouldn't talk to us simply because he had 7 broken ribs. Well, if you have broken ribs, the last thing you want to do is talk. So now we had a different understanding, of course, as to why he wouldn't talk.
During a surface battle, the USS Pogey sunk a Japanese vessel.
We picked up 5 Japanese prisoners, and we brought them aboard. And one of these guys, when he came aboard, when they brought him aboard, he hollered out, "San Diego!" Well, from then on, his name was San Diego. And found out, we thought maybe he could speak English, so we tried to quiz him, but found out that he couldn't speak much English, but he could speak a little Spanish. We found out he'd spent 3 years on a Mexican fishing fleet. So he had been off of San Diego. And so we brought them back to the state, back to Pearl Harbor. And after the war, one of them, I don't know if it's San Diego or not, but one of them wrote the commanding officer a letter of thanks, the way we treated him.